Fame, a primal allure of many men, the pursuit of which has led to a myriad of both great and despicable people that have in equal parts fascinated and mortified all of us. To chase this dragon almost always results in either your ascendance to a select few whose names will be invoked long after your passing, or usually your downfall into the long night of mediocrity with the rest of us. But that fear of failure does not stop millions of brave or stupid souls from trying. How far would you go for fame? Would you humiliate yourself, isolate yourself from everyone you once knew, willingly leave yourself at the mercy of complete strangers with not even a cloth draping you? Would you be willing to give up everything for that one shot at glory? For your name to be inscribed in the annals of history as a somebody amongst nobodies? Well, today we have a man who did just that. A man who some people might argue was the first ever popular live streamer. And some might also argue that the TV show that he was a part of took things a little bit too far. This is the story of Nasube. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get started, this video is brought to you by Raycon. Valentine's Day is coming up, so why not treat that special someone to some Raycon earbuds for listening to those romantic tunes in the best quality possible at half the price of other premium audio brands. And with 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life, they will be feeling the love for a long time. And you can listen for a really long time because Raycons come with optimised gel tips which provide a perfect in-ear fit. Regardless of the size and shape of your ears, Raycons provide maximum comfort and will stay snug whether you're listening at work or out for a run. I make the most of my Raycons by watching videos on the train to work, and if any of you have been on a Scottish train, you will understand why their noise isolation is my favourite feature. So if you want to spread the love this Valentine's Day and grab yourself or a loved one some snazzy earbuds while supporting my channel, then click the link in the description box down below or go to buyraycon.com/Dankula to get 15% off of your order and free shipping. Tomoaki Hamatsu was born on August 3rd, 1975 in Japan, Fukushima Prefecture. Unfortunately, there really isn't a lot of information about his early life, but we do know that he grew up in Fukushima City. It's interesting to note that God celebrated Tomoaki's birth 2 days later by killing 240,000 Chinese people in the 1975 Banqiao Dam failure. No, I won't elaborate, but trust me, they're connected somehow. Fast forwarding to the 1st of January 1998 in Tokyo, there were auditions for Nippon TV's new TV show, Susunu Denpa Shonen, a new experimental reality TV show which translates to Do Not Proceed, Crazy Youth. I don't know if that's an accurate translation, but let's just run with it. 22 aspiring somebodies were huddled into a room and had their names put into a raffle. And amongst them, as you may have guessed, was our own Tomoaki, who at this point had adopted the stage name of Nasube, which means eggplant in Japanese. Apparently he just really likes eggplants. Moving on, Nasube and his compatriots in this room were all aspiring comedians, though only one of them would move on to be the star or, well, victim of this new TV show. For those of you who somehow failed to pass the tutorial perception check, Nasube wins the raffle. Fucking idiots. However, within seconds of having his name pulled from the raffle and declared the victor, Nasube had but mere moments to celebrate before being dragged into a car. He was blinded by a sleeping mask, deafened by earmuffs, and brought to what must have been a very strange sight. a bare room, no windows, no fixtures beyond a rack filled to the brim with magazines, and an ominous table sitting in the centre with just a pile of letters, a ballpoint pen, papers, a telephone, and a radio. Mercifully, he had been granted the bare necessities of a gas cooker, a shower, and most importantly, a toilet. But before our hero had a chance to dwell upon any of this, he was told by staff to strip off bollock naked. With Nasibe stripped down to his namesake, he was given a microphone to wrap around his neck and was finally told his task. He was to raise 1 million yen via sweepstake contests, raffles, and mail-in competitions. You know, the stupid little magazine and radio competitions that say things like, write 15 funny dog puns and you could win a free BlackBerry. Yeah, he was somehow not only supposed to keep himself alive by winning food this way, and also maybe some clothes for himself because he was fucking naked, but he also somehow had to accrue 1 million fucking yen in value by entering these not even side quest tier competitions in magazines. The guy was essentially doing nothing but Stones of Baron Zaya and sustaining himself off of it. All the while, mind you, competing with every granny, chancer and middle-aged unemployed loser in the country who were also all entering these competitions. And every single bit of this was being streamed live 24 hours a day. Needless to say, our hero was up against some pretty overwhelming odds, but he knuckled down and with no time wasted, immediately sat his bony arse down on the one pillow that he was given and got to work. I mean, what's the problem after all? He's got no immediate time limit and the competitions, although menial and mind-numbingly dull, should at least be somewhat easy. Right? Now, I could sit here and document a full in-depth timeline of our hero's journey, all the way down to the very last detail about when he wins what. However, instead I would much rather ramble on some notable events leading up to this arc's narrative peak in a month-by-month format. These are by no means all of the events to have transpired in this story, nor are they even chronological. But these are, I feel, the most relevant and, most importantly, the funniest. Also, the reason I'm doing it this way is this was a 24-hour live stream that lasted for a very, very long time. This is thousands and thousands of hours of footage. I'm not watching all of that. Out of the gates into February, Nasibe had achieved a commendable fuck all. A whopping 14,860 yen. Taking inflation into account, that's enough to buy roughly 74 Family Mart fried chicken fillets. He needs 5,000 chicken fillets to win the competition. This is the unit of measurement that we're using for this video. No, I will not explain further. But he did end up winning something that was just described as jellies. So he ended up eating 12 of these nondescript jellies that he had won just a few days later. Pair this with his recreational exercise and his culinary prowess in cooking rice inside empty jelly packets, and you will find our Nasibe was well on the path to becoming somewhat of a stud physically. However, Nasibe got trolled as the postman came up to his door with a crate full of ramen and fried vegetables. Nasibe was absolutely thrilled until the postman realised he was at the wrong address. Sorry son, only jellied rice for you. Though his moods were then lifted by a package of spaghetti and an opportunity to sniff body soap. All is well. Come March, we are now up to 90,200 yen, or about 451 chicken fillets. He strikes proverbial gold as he manages to get sake and starts dancing like a truly happy-clappy jappy-chappy. As a good accessory to this alcoholism, he also acquired a folding bicycle to ride around his 5-square-foot liminal hell. Alongside all of that, he gets to enjoy a wide, varied diet, including, but not limited to, watered jelly rice, natto, canned sake spaghetti, pickled white radish, and a ballpoint pen flavoured steak. This happened because he didn't have a spatula, so he tried to use a ballpoint pen to cook the steak, and the pen melted into the pan. He still ate it. Nasibe finally got some panties to wear, but in a cruel twist of fate, his oxen frame was much too broad for such fine garments, and as such, he must remain in the nude for now, delegating the lingerie to the bike's handlebars. And to top it all off, he got a companion, a trusty sidekick seal doll by the name of Venus. His job is to guard the panty bike. Going through April, we are now up to 165,300 yen, or 826 chicken fillets. Nasibe converses with Venus.
まずはヴィーナスと朝のトーク。
本当に幸運の天使だよ、お前が来てからというもの。お肉も当たった、イチゴも当たった。
ヴィーナスよ、お前は幸福の天使だ。いやいや、神様だったりして。
And proceeds to get his talons on steamed pork buns. Of course, because he's an absolute fucking animal, he decides to just eat them raw. A second character then joins his crack team, a doll of anime boxer Toru Rikishi. Toru gives Nasibe inspirational talks and is a good sparring partner. How Nasibe managed to be bested by a 3-foot doll is beyond me. He also acquired a TV with no radio antenna, a PlayStation game called Densia Dego, which is about trains, a vacuum cleaner, and the thing that every Britbong dreads, a toothbrush. Nasibe also won a live lobster, which he spent a lot of time talking to, while he figured out a way that he could successfully cook him with what little he had. And he was successful, by the way, which, considering how long he spent talking to this lobster, it's kind of fucked up. It's now May, and Nasibe is at 292,060 yen, or 1,460 chicken fillets. This month is notable because an interloper appears in Nasibe's goon cave. A doctor, obviously sent by the studio to give Nasibe a checkup. After collecting blood and urine samples alongside touching all of the bits on the no-no bear, the doctor leaves, reporting that Nasibe is indeed in good health. Physically, anyway. Nasibe also won some shoes that actually fit him, and he managed to eat his way through the last of a 5-kilogram bag of rice that he won. Very sad, but fear not, as this month he won some dog food, which he ate. He got that dog in him. But Nasibe rounded out the month by doing a Michael Jackson impersonation, reminiscing about and subsequently willing into existence an additional 10-kilogram bag of rice, finishing off with yet another one of his slightly uncomfortable dances. Of course, it's rather important to note that around the latter portion of March, Nasibe's cognition starts noticeably slipping a bit. He starts doing manic victory dances that look like something you would see out in the African bush, and his already eccentric mannerisms were becoming increasingly erratic and protracted as time went on. This obviously kinda goes without saying, but spending months alone, locked inside a house, completely isolated with no contact at all with the outside world, and not even really being able to perceive what time of day it is, which can fuck up your circadian rhythm, over a long enough period of time, all of that stuff might just be a little bit damaging to your psyche. But June arrives and our firebrand is at 449,560 yen, or 2,247 chicken fillets. Having finally had the luxury to eat unjellied rice, Nasibe was already primed, so when he got a hold of duck meat, he was truly euphoric, shucking and jiving with glee.
お肉だが、
今週も当選の
お肉だが、が。
Truly, he was getting spoiled this month because he also managed to win ice cream, a kettle, seaweed, and what was essentially the closest thing he would ever have to a sexual encounter, a poster of his favourite actress, Ryoko Hirosu. Despite how good this month had gone, you know, gaining a waifu and a caloric surplus, unfortunately, calamity would strike. In the closing stretch of June, in the dead of night, Nasibe's den was intruded upon by the producers. Naturally, Nasibe was confused and excited, as not only was this the first time he had interacted with a human being face to face in over a month, but it was the very same producers that left him in that room all the way back in January. All of the excitement was instantly shattered, however, when the producers told him, no, we're not here because you've hit your target, you actually haven't hit your target. Because another part of the show is that Nasibe is never updated on his progress or how close he is to his target. Nasibe was then once more blindfolded, deafened and stuffed into the back of a van. Mind you, he's still naked while all of this is happening, he just had a blanket hastily wrapped around him so that he didn't scare the hose with his eggplant. For the first time in 5 months, Nasibe felt the crisp air of the outside world run through his Ichiban Kasuga Japfro. After 5 hours of travelling, Nasibe was probably feeling a rather nasty case of deja vu. Because once more he was stripped of his poverty shawl, earmuffs and sleeping mask to once more be placed in a bare, windowless room. But he did get to keep all of the trinkets and prizes that he had acquired over the last 5 months. The question probably on your mind is, why? Why would the producers go to all of this effort to disrupt the flow of the show for seemingly no reason? Well, as it turns out, Nasibe's little performance had actually gained quite a large following in Japan. Large enough for fans, alongside journalists, because of fucking course, to actually find where Nasibe was being kept. So, as a result, Nippon TV ended up shitting themselves and quickly scrambled to move Nasibe to another house in an undisclosed location. Probably because they didn't want the public coming up to the door and interfering with the show, or trying to feed Nasibe like a duck. Now, something that I feel is very important to mention at this point is Nasibe didn't actually realise that his jovial cockflop dance spiel was actually being broadcast on national television. Nasibe didn't know. Nasibe was briefed that the camera in his room was only there to be used as a video journal that would be cut up and edited after he reached the 1 million prize, and only then would all of the best clips be compiled together and then aired on TV. Nasibe thought that he was just putting on a funny little cock-flapping dance for the editors, thinking, obviously they're not going to show that on live television, when no. Everything was being broadcast live on TV. And finishing off June, Nasibe did get a table and chair. So, you know, count your blessings and all that. He also got nail polish for his Shaniqua-esque claws, betraying his composure and subtly highlighting his devolution into a more feral form. Nasibe did such a good job of putting on said nail polish that God celebrated by killing 4,000 more Chinese people in the 1998 Yangtze River floods. A theme is developing. July arrives and Nasibe gruelingly crawls to 473,960 yen, or 2,369 chicken fillets. July was a month of struggle for Nasibe because he didn't win any food, and thus he had to live off of his seaweed rations. But July also brought innovation. The whole thing was being broadcast live on TV. But the producers also turned the camcorder footage into an internet live stream that could be tuned into any time. Nothing to write home about nowadays, sure, but considering the fact that this is 1998, Nasabi's cam whore career is 4 months older than Half-Life 1. And yes, cam whore is the applicable term here because he was naked the entire time. So, of course, that begs the question, there are some things that you just can't show on TV, so how did they censor Nasabi's Nasabi? Well, it was pretty simple. They had an entire team of 50 people tuned into the live stream 24/7, and in shifts, they would hover an overlay of a purple circle over Nasabi's Nasabi. This elite unit was called the Internet Live Project, and they had an office suite that looked like it was coordinating with the Apollo missions. In fact, they even had custom-made Nasabi t-shirts that they would wear with Nasu on the back and a humble eggplant on the front. They must feel like massive weapons wearing those t-shirts while all collectively watching Nasabi 24/7 while playing Osu with his dick. Also, the whole eggplant emoji being used as a euphemism for penis thing, well, Nasabi is possibly patient zero for that. His name was literally Eggplant and he was dancing around with his dick out. People were wearing t-shirts with eggplants on them, and sometimes his dick was even censored with a picture of an eggplant. So people started making that association way long before the eggplant emoji was even released in 2010. So, do with that information what you will. August passes with Nasabi reaching 538,074 yen, 2,690 chicken fillets. An important milestone as he is now more than halfway to his goal of 1 million yen. August is when Nasabi finally gets some food after being blueballed repeatedly. And you wouldn't believe it, but he got rice again. I know, absolutely shocking. His satisfaction was waning, however, as the bastard had the audacity to complain about the lack of taste in the food he's receiving. You know, apparently jelly, seaweed, rice and the odd ice cream isn't good enough for our hero anymore. Good thing the entitled prick got himself a watermelon, and after praying to Zoroaster, he got himself a basket of pickled eggplants, alongside the fan favourite of nondescript jelly drink, which does not sound appealing. Nasabi also managed to win an inflatable swimming ring. The ring itself isn't that interesting, but what is interesting is the fact that Nasabi almost fainted while he was trying to blow it up, because his physicality had somewhat deteriorated in the last 7 months. His grind set was impeded this month as the air conditioner had stopped working. So our hero had to open a window and, I assume, give the poor elderly neighbour a bit of a heart attack. Opening the window didn't even really help, to say the least. In a fit of mild annoyance, Nasabi cast a hex on the aircon, and it suddenly started working again.
Okay. すると
Showcasing that despite his physical and mental atrophy, his power level was still increasing. For whatever reason, Nasabi and Venus seemingly had a domestic dispute that culminated in Nasabi striking Venus down with a vacuum cleaner. Toru sat in the corner watching, probably very distressed by this unfolding carnage. Nasabi's excuse was that he was trying to hit the watermelon on the floor, though frankly, I don't believe him. He later prayed to his waifu's effigy and was blessed with a coupon to attend the airing of the Spice Girls movie, which he obviously couldn't even go to. Though, probably for the best. Firing into September, Nasabi makes it to 559,374 yen, or 2,796 chicken fillets. It seems Madame Hirosu had taken note of Nasabi's continued worship and had thus gifted unto him a second poster of her. Now, Nasabi has 2 idols of Hirosu-sama for him to fawn over. What a Lucky Little Cucky, alongside a car's GPS manual and a bicycle race DVD that he couldn't even watch. Nasabi was also bestowed with a 20% travel discount for some random event that he obviously can't even go to. A very eventful month indeed. Just as a little bit of a side note, what isn't usually talked about when it comes to Nasabi's story is the fact that he actually did get to leave the room. Not often, very, very rarely, but he did get to leave the room, because the producers actually brought him to a beachfront to relax for an undisclosed amount of time. This, of course, is because not being in the sun for very long periods can have very bad effects on your health. His self-imposed lethargy, however, had taken quite a toll on him, and because he hadn't been out in the sun for a while, he got very badly sunburned. So this would all explain why Nasabi earned little to nothing in the month of September, because he got taken out on this trip and he got very, very badly sunburned, so obviously that was a bit of mental and physical anguish that was difficult for him to deal with. The producers mostly kept this on the down low because they wanted the audience at home to believe that Nasabi never left the room. But in the same breath, the producers obviously have to take him out of the room to give him somewhat of a reprieve to take care of his mental and physical health. October hits with 681,874 yen, or 3,409 chicken fillets. It's clear that Nasabi has been working his arse off as he is now 2/3 of the way to his goal. He only needs 1,591 more chicken fillets to hit his target and finally leave his prison. He spent the opening week getting absolutely fuck all except the producers walking into his room in the dead of night and Nasabi getting moved yet again to another location. But this time it wasn't because the house got doxed. This was done because Nasabi had actually been really unlucky in the competitions lately, and the producers blamed this on the bad feng shui of the property he was in. So they moved him to a different one. Yeah, seriously, Nasabi was moved because the producers thought that the feng shui of the property he was in was bringing him bad luck. There was, however, a brief panic as the staff forgot to move Nasabi's 10-kilogram bag of rice along with him. He did get it back though, so it's all good. He got some crisps this month and, most interestingly, a DVD player. For those of you who remember, Nasabi won a TV back in April that he couldn't use since it didn't have an antenna. But now he has a DVD player and the bicycle race DVD that he won back in September. We are so back, boys. Nasabi spent the next hour stimming to background music and watching 360p footage of middle-aged men race each other on bicycles. A luxury few of us can afford. He must have really needed that stimming session because come November, Nasabi had hit 838,114 yen, 4,190 chicken fillets. Nasabi contemplates his hair growth and, as a result, ties it up into a top bun by using a piece of spare fabric to hold it up. Alongside a weighing scale, a leather belt and a nice scrumptious meal consisting of mushrooms and more mushrooms, Nasabi also got some toilet paper. An otherwise very boring find that was made notable when Nasabi immediately went to the toilet as soon as he got it. And thinking about it, while watching hundreds of hours of this footage, I don't remember seeing bog roll in any of the houses. Which makes me think that Nasabi was not wiping his arse this entire time. He also managed to win a PlayStation 1, which, if you remember back in April, he won the PlayStation game Densia de Go, which was about trains. He ended up gaming for about 3 days without sleep before realising that this train sim might not be the most productive hobby. And thus, Nasabi went into a self-imposed PlayStation prohibition. For this, he rewarded himself with a steak, which he thoroughly enjoyed as he didn't have to use a ballpoint pen as a spatula this time. The month finished on a high note as he won himself a tent. December comes, as did Nasibe probably, because he managed to reach 969,114 yen. 4,845 chicken fillets. He was so close to hitting his goal. Having decided that the tent is comfortable to sleep in, he set up his battle station inside it and then won a third waifu poster of Miss Hirosu. Nasibe realised that the tent took up so much space that he couldn't do a rain dance. So there goes the tent. He then won himself a pair of heavy-duty truck tyres. So, in true Nasibe fashion, he decided to do his best Tron light cycle impression. If it wasn't so fucking weird and sad, it would be almost endearing. In the closing days of December, with a voucher, photo book, golf balls, pan, rice seasoning, and if you wouldn't believe it, rice, Nasibe had finally done it. After 335 days of mind-numbing writing, he finally cracked 1 million yen. 5,000 chicken fillets. In the dead of night, as Nasibe slumbers, the producers once more let themselves into the house to tell him the good news, with party poppers at point-blank range. Waking up to find the whole production team in his room again, firing clown khaki on his face, naturally made Nasibe quite sceptical. After a few moments, he must have felt the greatest catharsis in his life as finally he could put his dick away. He was congratulated by staff and was ceremonially handed his clothes, to which Nasibe could do nothing but bow. A rare moment of composure and grace, despite being a bony naked hermit. Nasibe ritualistically dresses himself, donning the clothes that he had stripped off 11 months previously, though he finds that spending almost a year completely bollock naked has actually resulted in him being psychologically conditioned to being naked. He found his clothes itchy and irritable, so he took them off again, at least until he has to rejoin society. After eating some ramen that he was gifted by the staff, he was clothed in a dapper suit and blindfolded once more and whisked away for a nice vacation. Nasibe was brought to Korea to have some much-deserved R&R. After being tortured for a year, having the opportunity to be wined and dined by the producers obviously wouldn't be passed up. So Nasibe got to go around eating kimchi and ribeye, he got to ride a roller coaster, and best of all, he got to beat the daylights out of people in bumper cars. All in all, it's the least Nasibe deserves. After a long day of whiteys and whimsy, Nasibe was once more blindfolded, put into a car to be driven back to the airport to be sent home. Our hero had finished the fight. It was finally over. Or was it? Nasibe's blindfold was lifted, and he saw something that he never wanted to gaze upon again. A blank room with a magazine rack, table, and phone. He was once again told to strip. He was given a microphone and a Japanese to Korean dictionary because the magazines were in Korean, a language that Nasibe didn't speak. And once more, he was given his task. Do it again. Nasibe's task was to earn the cost of one plane ticket from Seoul in South Korea to Tokyo. Nothing fancy, just an economy class ticket worth 46,900 yen. Roughly $317, or about 234 chicken fillets. I mean, that's nothing compared to what he's just went through, but why even do this in the first place? Well, it turns out that Nippon TV's little experiment had blown up far more than they could ever have anticipated. According to reports, Susumu Denpa Shonen had upwards of 17 million viewers per week tuning in to watch Nasabe eat seaweed naked and scribble fanfiction. For comparison, the last episode of Breaking Bad only garnered 10 million viewers on its first airing. With all of these eyes on Nippon TV, they were making far too much money to be reasonable. So, when it turned out that Nasabe in the latter months was starting to adapt to his situation and started making bigger and bigger winnings and was closing the gap faster than ever, they shit themselves. Simply put, Nasabe got too good at it. So, they had to pad out the runtime by keeping Nasabe in a foreign country naked for a few more months. So Nasabe just went through the motions and got to work without a second thought. Miserable but determined to finally win this fucking competition once and for all. In January of 1999, after the shock had worn off, Nasabe spends the first few days acclimating to his predicament, mainly struggling to read and write the Korean alphabet. The producers seem to have pitied Nasabe because they let him keep some of the leftover kimchi to tide him over. After eating his kimchi, he won more kimchi. And that was the only thing he won in January. This month wasn't looking good. February and March come and Nasabe won some bananas. And by some, I mean he won a whole fucking crate of bananas. This, paired with the kimchi, somehow helped him hit his target and afford a plane ticket home, with an extra 900 yen profit. 4 whole chicken fillets worth. He wasn't informed of this, so he just sat there munching on the bananas like a good little monkey. Naturally, the producers were absolutely fucking livid. They were hoping to milk this scenario for at least another few months. So they decided, you know what, fuck you Nasabe, it's a business class plane ticket now. Win another 10,000 yen if you want to go home. If you're going to eat like a monkey, you better dance like one too. And just like that, the bar was raised yet again. Another 9,500 yen to win. Nasabe then wins himself a couple of packets of nice novelty green tea. He gives it a mighty sniff before pondering how much money this tea is worth. It's probably not worth much, he thinks, before sitting back down and returning to his grind. Well, it turns out that this green tea was actually Korean Ujion tea, which is actually pretty fucking expensive, like 14,000 yen expensive. Nasabe had won again, not even a month later. With just one win, he had already won again. He sat there smugly sniffing and sipping on the tea without even knowing he had just demolished the producers yet again. So, what do you think the producers did upon seeing this? That's right, now it's a first class ticket, pressing the goal back another 19,800 yen. The producers feared the Nasabe. He was adapting, evolving. He was unstoppable. He then wins a short rib, a wooden painting frame, a live octopus, and a fox neck scarf that he names Bikal, totaling off at 85,590 yen. Nasabe had won yet again for the third time in 2 months. The producers then tried to pull a fast one by rerouting the plane journey from a direct flight, Seoul to Tokyo, to a connecting flight going the other direction, Seoul to Paris, then Tokyo. This would have raised the goal to 944,440 yen, practically doubling the initial goal of 1 million yen. And they would have gotten away with it too had it not been for one thing. Nasabe noticed. Then the producers just finally gave up. Standard procedure, break into Nasabe's room in the dead of night, flashlight in his face, and enlighten him that he has won yet again. Little slight hiccup though, one of the producers accidentally dropped the flashlight onto Nasabe's dick. You know, not the nicest way to wake up.
しかしこの時、あるアクシデントがナスビを襲う。ライトは滑ってナスビの股間を直撃。その結果、ナスビお目覚め。
I swear to God, this guy gets trafficked more than a child actor. After spending 91 days in Korea, Nasabe boarded that plane from Seoul to Tokyo and reclined back on that fucking well-earned first-class ticket, and probably breathed a long overdue sigh of relief. But it wasn't time to celebrate just yet. As is usually the case, upon landing in Tokyo, Nasabe was blindfolded, deafened, and stuffed into the back of a car. His destination was yet another room. He was dumped in there, given his magazines, and told to do all of it all over again. This is imprisonment at this point. It really is. It seemed that no matter what Nasabe did, the producers were just going to keep sticking him in random rooms with magazines over and over again, and every single time he hit his target, they would just raise the bar or just stick him in another room. But regardless, Nasabe, naked as usual, just said, "Ah shit, here we go again," and got back to work. However... There are no words that could describe what probably went through Nasabe's head at that moment. It must have been almost dreamlike to go from over a year of almost unbroken isolation to being sat before a 1,000 person strong clapping crowd completely fucking naked. Nasabe was then shown the extent of his newfound fame. Countless tabloids and newspapers covering his story, alongside an unsettling magazine cover of him. He was even premiered on foreign news programmes like the BBC. The diary that he had kept throughout the ordeal was even lifted by the producers and compiled into a book, which went on to become a bestseller. And that book would have been a great source for this video, but none of us speak Japanese. A bunch of clips were also organised and sold as a compilation VHS. Nasabe was getting the full Baby Yoda treatment. It is at this time that Nasabe was also made aware of the live stream, in which he realised that all of his most sensitive moments of weakness and vulnerability and those funny little cock dances were all being watched by millions of people live. People also paid for this stream, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that part. Do you remember when Nasabe had that quick bowl of ramen when he was getting ready for some R&R in Korea? Well, that ended up being used in a ramen commercial.
食べてるこのままの映像が現在連日放送されているのである。
うまい。うまいじゃないです。うまいです。
そのうまい豚骨はハウス。うまかっちゃ。
After a ceremonial feast, Nasabe was shawled up and shifted out off stage, the extent of the treachery against him only now just setting in. As he gets loaded into the back of a car once again, he finally left his sweepstake prison behind for good. However... No, I'm joking. He really is done now. So, after such a horrendous ordeal of isolation, malnourishment, physical and mental health problems, as well as having his cock-slapping dances broadcast live to millions of people, you would think that there would be some great reward waiting for him at the end. After all, he completed all of the challenges he was given, so what was his prize? Nothing. But to clarify, we couldn't find if he was actually given something, like after he earned 1 million yen, was he given 1 million yen as a prize or anything like that? Maybe he was, but we couldn't find any evidence whatsoever of any prize that Nasabi was given. Though it's presumed that he got some royalties from the diary of his that was published. Well, if he didn't get any cash, at least he could now capitalise on his newfound fame. Right? Well, while the show was running, Nasabi was one of the most famous people in all of Japan. His popularity absolutely exploded in the year that the live stream was running. But the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long. And once the show was over, Nasabi's fame actually fizzled out pretty quickly. His time in the sun was well earned, but comically short. He was left with pretty much nothing but over a year of his life wasted, as well as deep psychological scars that actually took him a few years to truly recover from. Which is a pretty sour note to end on. You might have noticed that the majority of our story today had quite an upbeat and comical tone to it, and it's only now at the end of the story that we are taking a sober look at the pain that this ordeal inflicted upon our hero. And I did this on purpose. Nasabi was an aspiring comedian when he entered this TV show, and despite the long periods of airbrushed agony that he went through, he still did his best to entertain. Putting on a brave face and powering through the boredom, starvation, isolation and cold sleepless nights with a smile, a laugh, a silly face and his stupid iconic dance. Nasabi is a comedian, and as such I think we should honour him because he did his best to make everyone laugh despite everything he was going through. So, where is he now? Well, Nasabi is still doing small stand-up gigs in his hometown of Fukushima, where he's still regarded as somewhat of a local celebrity. In this vein, he also founded his own comedy troupe called Eggplant Way, and they perform across Japan with adequate success. He had a few cameos in some Japanese comedy series, though the roles are admittedly not very notable. Though another notable thing that Nasabi did was he made multiple attempts to climb Mount Everest. He did this to raise awareness for his home region's apparent nuclear meltdown. On May the 9th, 2016, Nasabi finally succeeded after 3 failed attempts. God celebrated this by killing everyone on board Egypt Air Flight 804 10 days later. Why bring this up? Well, there might have been a Chinese person on board. Nasabi turned up to the studio on that fateful day hoping to launch his comedy career. And he really risked his health and his sanity to make it happen. Yet, he still gave us a bunch of laughs all along the way, despite all of the horrible things he was going through. I do think he deserved a lot more money and fame for the sheer amount of work and blood, sweat and tears that he put into this whole thing, but hey, you can't control what the public likes. I feel he deserved a lot more than he got. He might not be a household name like he wanted, but he is still, at the very least, a somebody.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody just subscribe.